Welcome back to part 3. So we're now going to put the final touches on this image, and we're going to do so with strong regard to the non-compositional devices that we can use. So let's get straight into it. We're going to create a new empty layer. We're going to use the AI tool, and we're going to target this tabletop. There we go, we've got it. So we'll just quickly label this as we go, which will be table exposure. And what we're going to do now is we are going to lower the brightness of this table. So therefore the brightness of this table is not competing with the brightness of the subject, because we still want the subject to be more or less the brightest thing in frame. Now it does not have to be extremely brighter, it can just be a few points brighter, but that will still clearly isolate it as what is the focal point of this photo. We're now going to create another empty layer. We're going to use the AI tool again, but this time we're going to grab the bowl. We're going to refine the mask. That's looking good. And we're going to lower the brightness on the bowl as well. And again, the reason why we refine the masks is to avoid posturization between the subject and anything else that is going on around it. So we will label this plate exposure. So that's looking pretty good. Now if we come back down to the pair values, I'm now going to increase the brightness by 10 points. I'm going to increase the cheese by, say, 5. And I'm going to increase the cracker by, say, 5. 3 looks pretty good. So what we have effectively achieved now is that even though it's very subtle, this is still the brightest part of the frame. Now moving through to the rest, we're now going to create another empty image layer, and we're going to use the linear graduated mask. We're going to drag it down from the left. We're just going to even it out a little bit. Maybe that's a little bit heavy-handed. And we're now going to lower the brightness in this part of the frame and maybe drop the exposure by 0.1. So therefore the light graduation is still operating on that sinister angle. But while I'm here, what I'm also going to do is bring out the white balance tool, and we're going to lower the Kelvin by about 600 points. Now we want to be careful because there is blue in the color grade in the shadows, and we don't want the skin to look too cold. But what we are trying to build here is color contrast between the foreground of the image, the middle ground of the image, and the background of the image. So we'll label this grad linear left temp, so that way we don't lose ourselves. Now when I look at this photo, part of my hand has now become a little bit cool. So we're going to rasterize this, rasterize this mask. And we're just going to remove with a very low flow just off the hand, so the hand doesn't look gray and sickly and unhealthy. Let's have a look. Now again, obviously we could take our time, but that's looking pretty good to me, and just to keep this tutorial moving at a good pace. So if we now bring up the before and after, we have transformationally changed this photo. And in my opinion, it obviously looks a hell of a lot better. So now we're going to put on final touches. So final touches will be in the form of retouching. That if we come in here, just this little crack in the cracker that I made is just catching my eye a little bit too much. That looks a lot better. The next thing I can spot is when I took this photo, I damaged my fingernail about a week earlier, and it almost kind of looks like a slightly dirty fingernail. Now, we can correct this with clone and heal masks. Capture One is not quite as sophisticated as Photoshop, so what I would do is I would create a mask around this finger, then go into the color editor management tools, but specifically the skin tone, and I would begin to make corrections there. Sometimes this is very easy and straightforward to do, sometimes it gets a little bit fiddly, and I feel to add that step will make this tutorial longer than what it needs to be potentially, but that has caught my eye. So when we begin to, again, the before, the after, I'm feeling like this photo is in a pretty good place. The last thing that has caught my eye, if anything, is if we bring out the style brushes again, we come into light and contrast, and we come into highlight recovery on a new layer. The top edge of these crackers is just coming in ever so slightly too hot for me. So we'll just correct that. That looks a lot better. Let's put away the style brushes. And if we come back, we can now put away the layers and masks because we're done with that for now. So for my eye, that is now the completed photo. That this is now ready for publishing or for digital display. If anything, I will rest my eyes for a couple of hours and then I will come back and look at the image again, and the very first thing that catches my eye will be the first thing that I correct. And I can almost certainly say at this stage, I'm actually going to lower the opacity on the color grade layer and mask down to 70 because it is looking a little strong. But there we have it. There is the final completed photo of a very simple food dish, but that to me is now ready for publishing or for public display or digital display for restaurants, commercial purposes, etc. So I hope you've enjoyed this three-part tutorial. I hope you've learned something from it. It is always good to see the world through the eyes of someone else, and I wish you all the best with your food photography. And as this channel begins to grow and expand, we'll begin to look at editing more complex food images with more complex lighting and some other helpful tips and tricks about when one lens over another is more useful and all things to do with food photography. So I look forward to seeing you in the future. Have a great day, guys.